What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, so if you didn't know, the corporate press, they're still trying to push the 2016 Russian collusion hoax. Oh yeah, they definitely are. Now look, we've just got a bunch of information declassified from the FBI about that, and there's a report, but the corporate press, they kind of lie about it a lot. They kind of brush over some stuff, but it's fascinating. Let's get into this, because CIA review criticizes procedures but not conclusions of intelligence report on 2016 Russian election interference. Yeah, they had to reframe it as Russian election interference. It has nothing to do with Trump, does it? CIA officials failed in some cases to follow standard procedures in an intelligence analysis of Russian interference efforts in the 2016 election, according to an internal review declassified Wednesday. Intelligence officers were given an unusually short timeline for the analysis. There was excessive involvement by senior leaders and staff members, and were given uneven access to crucial intelligence about Russia, the lessons learned review said. Now, what I love about this, excessive involvement by upper leaders, right? So we knew where the Steele dossier came from. We knew that that was a completely fabricated dossier meant to disparage Donald Trump, meant to tie Donald Trump's hands for the first, 2 years of his presidency at least, that this whole Russian collusion hoax was going on. It was meant to tie up all of his intelligence into investigating him, for goodness sakes. Now we know the spying on Donald Trump's campaign and all of that. That was all set up by the Obama administration, right? And, Obama holdovers in the FBI and the CIA and all these places. This was all set up, and it was all intentional, and everything was meant, right? They pretty much conflated the Steele dossier, which Obama, they all knew this was fabricated and it was fake. They conflated that with this report from standard Russian election interference to make it look like Donald Trump was working with the Russians here. It's fascinating. And then they're just trying to say, it was just excessive involvement by senior leaders and staff were given uneven access. I wonder why they were given uneven access. Yeah, because they did not want them to connect the dots. That's why. But the review did not refute the findings of the 2017 intelligence assessment that Russia waged an information warfare campaign designed to undermine Americans' confidence in the electoral process, damage Hillary Clinton, and boost Donald Trump's prospect in the 2016 election. This is standard operating procedure, folks. This is normal. Russia does this every single time we have an election. They interfere with the election, or they attempt to interfere with the election. China, once again, we found out recently through declassified reports that China was making up, get this folks, millions of fake ballots so that Chinese nationals would vote for Joe Biden. That is right, we just found that out. And guess who didn't cover that? The corporate press, folks. They didn't cover that news article. That should be the biggest news story. Well, with Donald Trump in office, you can never predict what's going to be the biggest news story. But that right there, in a normal year, would be the biggest scandal of any presidency. The corporate press, they didn't even cover it. They just brushed right over that. Absolutely brushed right over that. They don't want you to know that. No, that's crazy conspiracy theory coming from the Matt Van Show, for goodness sakes. Maybe Bear Jags can cover that one too. But yeah, it's just fascinating, folks. They try to conflate all kinds of different things to make you think that Donald Trump was working with the Russians. They had a lot of people believing that. As a matter of fact, there are people till this day that still believe that Trump was somehow, they don't know that the Steele dossier was fake. They don't know that all of that was fake. All of it. They don't know that Russia interferes with every single election. China tries to interfere with every single election. Making up fake ballots, folks. Fake mail-in ballots. Once again, like I always said, Democrats colluded. I could say this because Democrats went from state to state to state. We know this. We covered this. Changing rules and changing laws to allow for mail-in ballots. To allow for them to be counted late, to lax the rules on signature verification, dates and all that. If there's something wrong with them, count it anyway. If it's post-dated, count it anyway. If it comes in late, count it anyway. Who is to say that Democrats were not working with China to get those ballots across the line? Who is to say that they didn't succeed? Once again, folks, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers from the 2020 election. That 2020 election was a definite anomaly. Now, I know what you might be saying, might be thinking, your conspiratorial mind over there. Well, we had a pandemic going on and people couldn't leave their homes. Well, is that true? Is that actually true? Because I can't say that was true, because right here, Southwest Louisiana, we were never on lockdown at all. Never. We were never shut down. Sure, some people were, but it wasn't many. We never were. I missed 2 days of work when Donald Trump came out and said 2 weeks to slow the spread. 2 days of work. That was it. That was all I missed. Did not see a difference at all. So, I find it kind of hard to believe. Now, I know urban areas like New York, these places were locked down, but middle America, was it really locked down? Did we really need? Did the situation necessitate mail-in ballots, in other words? Which mail-in ballots, by the way, how do you secure that? Especially when you have China attempting to inject millions of fake ballots to help one candidate and hurt another. Like I said, look at the numbers, folks. Hillary Clinton, 65 million votes. Kamala Harris, 74 million? Joe Biden, 81 million votes. If that's not anomalous, I don't know what is. Fascinating, though, don't you think? While the overall assessment was deemed defensible, the identified procedural anomalies and tradecraft issues highlight critical lessons for handling controversial or politically charged topics, the review said. Trump and his allies have long rejected intelligence and other reporting indicating that Russia employed false information and propaganda to try to influence the 2016 election and tip the scales in his favor. This is a blatant lie. It's just an outright lie. It really is. They are trying to tell you that Donald Trump said that Russia didn't get involved at all. No, what he was denying was his involvement, right? Because at the same time, he was being accused of working with the Russians. There were people that went on MSNBC that claimed that he was possibly a Soviet spy. Yes, not Russian, Soviet spy in 2016. Connect those dots for me if you don't mind. Yeah. So he was denying that. He wasn't denying that Russia interfered with the election because, once again, folks, that's a well-known fact that Russia attempts or succeeds in interfering with our elections every 2 years. They even interfere in local elections, for goodness sakes, or they attempt to interfere. I'm not going to say that they actually do, because a lot of those efforts are thwarted, as a matter of fact. But once again, the corporate press just lying. They have accused intelligence and law enforcement officials of plotting to tie Trump to Russia and cast doubt on the legitimacy of his victory in 2016. Once again, folks, they have accused intelligence of plotting to tie Trump. No. I think that was the intelligence agencies that plotted to tie Trump, not Trump. Like, what? Like, these people, once again, the manipulation is hardcore right here. It's just heavy. They're trying to make you think, because of that previous statement, that it's Donald Trump is accusing the intelligence agencies of attempting to tie him. But it was the actual intelligence agencies that were attempting to tie him to Russia. You see how they twist things around, folks? Got to have a keen eye to catch that stuff, I guess. A special counsel appointed during the first Trump administration looked extensively into how the CIA crafted its assessment, but filed no criminal charges and reported no clear evidence that political bias tainted the process. Maybe we should take a look at that again. Oh, that's what they're doing, isn't it? A bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee investigation in 2020 concurred with the 2017 intelligence assessment and found no reason to dispute its conclusions. In Trump's second presidential term, his deputies have vowed to bring more transparency to the intelligence community and prevent any attempt to politicize its work. Why would they throw that in here? I wonder. CIA Director John Ratcliffe ordered the internal review this year and declassified it Wednesday, according to CIA. The intelligence assessment of the 2016 vote, which President Barack Obama requested after the November election, found that Russia sought to undermine public faith in the democratic process and denigrate Clinton, and that Moscow aspired to help Trump win the election. So they didn't actually help him win the election. That's what this is saying. But what the corporate press would have you believe is, oh, well, they were trying to help Trump. But leaving that inconclusive. But they aspired to. That's specific language, because aspirations usually don't correlate with reality. You know, we all aspire to be something, but a lot of times we don't quite stack up to those aspirations. Fascinating, that wordage right there. Two senior leaders of a CIA mission center focusing on Russia objected to including the conclusion that Russia aimed to help secure Trump's victory, according to the internal review. Is that so? So somebody said there's clearly no connections here. Let's not put this Steele dossier into this internal review. Fascinating. They argued that the view was supported mainly by a single intelligence report, while other judgments were backed up by more information. Once again, they're trying to throw you off the trail here. The review said the assessment was conducted on an unusually short timeline. Instead of having months to prepare a complex and politically sensitive analysis, the authors had less than a week to draft the assessment and less than 2 days to formally coordinate it with other intelligence officers. That's not a lot of time at all, don't you think? You can see. So when you got top leadership, you know, like helicoptering over these people and trying to interject their own politics into this thing, maybe you could see how they would get some things wrong here and just conflate all kinds of different things and, you know, get this whole Trump collusion hoax going. You know, with this assessment that Russia was they were aspiring to help Donald Trump, with no clear connections to Donald Trump, but yet you've got this fake dossier over here that actually do connect him. Now we can see why the corporate press was running 24/7 coverage of this. It's funny, y'all. Multiple intelligence officers said they felt jammed by the compressed timeline, according to the review. The review said top CIA officials were heavily involved in the assessment effort, which was highly unusual in both scope and intensity. Let's delve into that for a second. Both in scope and intensity. Intensity. So they were intense. So they were pushing these people. Trump colluded with the Russians. Trump colluded. So this was all politically motivated, is what they're trying to say here. Because the heads of these agencies are politically appointed, folks. They're not career agents. They're political. Fascinating, that is. As a result, the Defense Intelligence Agency and the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research were entirely shut out of the analysis, which was a significant deviation from standard practice in the intelligence community, according to the review. Authors of the 2016 assessment and other CIA officers also strongly opposed including a reference in the analysis to the so-called Trump dossier compiled by former British intelligence officer Christopher Steele. The dossier included unverified allegations about Trump's colluding with Russia. I wonder why these career agents did not want to include this in the assessment. Unverified, huh? You see what the corporate press is trying to do? They're trying to still leave it up in the air that the Steele dossier could be real, when we know for a fact that it was entirely fabricated by who? the Hillary Clinton campaign. Fascinating. In the end, a summary of the dossier was included in an annex with a disclaimer that it was not used to reach the analytic conclusions in the assessment. Right, so it was just a poison pill, folks. That's all that was. Meant to throw off any other intelligence officer that may be working on this thing. And this is, it gives it to the corporate press in a big, beautiful package here. Trump colluded with the Russians. That's what the headline was. The review also found reasons to praise the 2016 assessment, saying that much of the team's work showed robust tradecraft with extensive sourcing and that there was no sign of systemic problems. John Brennan, who was a CIA director at the time of the assessment, told NBC News on Wednesday he was aware of the review but had not had a chance to read it yet. Yeah, and he's probably not going to because he knows. He was the head of the CIA. So this guy, John Brennan, absolutely knew that the Steele dossier and this whole Russian collusion hoax with Trump was completely fabricated. It was completely bunk and totally made up by the Hillary Clinton campaign. It's all fascinating, but they're trying to leave everything, they're trying to phrase everything in such a way to leave it all up in the air. Once again, for the Trump deranged people that want to believe that just because Russia interferes in our elections, Trump has to have some sort of involvement, doesn't he? I mean, Adam Schiff came out on TV every single day and said that there's significant evidence and more than circumstantial evidence that Trump colluded with the Russians to win that election. Is that so? Are you sure about that, Adam Schiff? And Adam Schiff got an upgrade of sorts, if you will. He's a senator now. He's no longer a congressman. How does somebody that lies his way into Congress, lies through his teeth to the American people for a year and a half, gets upgraded to a senator? I'm not sure how that works, but I think I've rambled on for long enough on this one, y'all. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. That's all I got. Y'all don't forget to smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you're new around here. Share this video anywhere and all over the place all at the same time. And sign up, become a member. Help the channel grow and expand and blow up. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.